Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar by Birmingham City University and BAM, where we'll be looking at the construction of what is currently, though possibly not for long, Birmingham's tallest tower. So 103 Colmore Row, or rather the construction of 103 Colmore Row, has been a landmark development in Birmingham for several years since 2018. It's got 26 floors above ground, built on the foundations of the old NatWest Tower, and on a really tight site. So it's been a fascinating project. With me here tonight are Phil Eves, the Education Coordinator for BAM. Hello, Phil. Who has been working with Solomon Ajay. Hello, Solomon. Who leads our construction management course at Birmingham City University, and he also led the student project we'll be talking about later in this talk. Also with us is Daryl Stein, BAM's consultant senior planner for the project, as well as Jay Roberts, the project manager for 103 Colmore Row. Finally, we have Alexandra Roche, who is a former construction management student with BCU, alongside being a trainee site manager for BAM on several of their city centre projects at the same time as studying, and who's now working with Hales Owen College. So this session is aimed at anybody thinking about a career in the built environment, but anybody who knows the site, who's interested in the project, may well find it useful as well. So tonight we're going to go through 3 short presentations. Solomon is going to start with a short overview of how we undertake a project like this. Phil will talk about the different professions and the companies who are involved on and off site, how they interact. And finally, we'll take a look at how BCU students like Alex took on a really challenging project based on the 103 Colmore Row development. And after each of those mini presentations, we'll have a panel discussion about how things worked in practice on this project. We'll be with you about an hour in total, which is not nearly long enough to discover everything about this project, but long enough to give you a flavour of what it involves, the types of jobs you can go into. And I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion and learning something new. So for now, we will all disappear the rest of the panel, and we will pass you over to Solomon for how we build a tower.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining today. As Nikki said, we're going to look at how such a complex project like what we're talking about today, or how to build a tower, but we're going to look at it from a very simple perspective, the simplest way we can try to narrow this down. So as Nikki said, my name is Dr. Solomon Ajay. I'm the course leader for construction management here at Birmingham City University, and I had the privilege to work with the students alongside BAM on this project for our students' practical project. Again, something we'll talk about getting to the end. So now the question is, how do you build a tower? I'm sure we've all seen towers. I'm sure you can recognize some of the pictures in there. We've got 103 Colmore Row itself on the top right. We've got Eiffel Tower. We've got all these towers, this in London. And I'm sure you've come across towers and you keep wondering, how do they build something this magnificent? So what we're looking at today is looking at 3 main phases of building a tower. One is what we call the design phase, or design considerations. At this stage, you decide, what do we want to build? And where are we going to build it? Somebody will be asking, why do you worry about where to build it? Because where you build it is going to have a big impact on how you design it. So first, we're going to look at design considerations. And because this is a tower, we look at something called structural stability. How do you ensure such a structure will stand? Again, we look at some of the location issues that would play a part in the design. Then we come to what we call the pre-construction phase, where you decide how you're going to build it. So at that phase, you plan the construction process. You do a number of activities that would have to go on before you even start working on site, planning where to get your materials from, planning how to get things to your site, how to set up your site. Then we have the construction phase itself, where you look at how do we actually build. That's where you do the building itself. You have to manage resources, your labor, your plant, your materials. You have to manage external impacts, manage people within the local environment, the local community. So all these are considerations you need to review, or at least you need to have a look at before you go and build it. So once you decide that you're going to build a tower, there's something we call stakeholder management, stakeholder engagement. The question is, which people would be affected or would be involved in the process? Things like the client, who would be the one who wants the project, what we normally call the employer. Things like the design team and the consultants, people who would actually convert what the client wants from a mere idea onto something on paper and on card and BIM modules and all of that. Then we have the contractor, who would be in charge of managing the construction phase of it, would be in charge of making sure that project is built. The contractor would normally have what we call subcontractors to do various elements of the work for them. So they are all stakeholders. You have the council being your stakeholder because yes, you're doing this project. Let's say in Birmingham, the council will be part of it because there are impacts on the people. There's the social impact, the environmental impact. All these, the council has to be involved. Then again, you have your neighbors, people who live around your site, who work around your site. What is the impact on them? What is the disruption you're going to have? How do you manage all of these? Then you have your suppliers, people who would bring you the materials you need, the plant you need, the equipment you need to do the work. So first you think of your stakeholders. Once you've done that, you come to the design. So looking at the pictures you have on there, questions such as, okay, what is going to be the shape of our project? What is going to be the shape of the tower? What is going to be the size of the tower? How does that impact on everything else we do? What materials would we even require to build a tower? Are we going to do it all steel? Do we need concrete? Are we going to use, can we use timber? So these are questions you answer, which would guide the design process. Again, what is the structural stability requirement? How high are we going? How does that impact on the base we set up? How does that impact on the foundation? Another question is, how do we even ensure the tower stands in the face of excessive winds? Because you're building something very tall, again, it's going to be impacted by the wind. So how do you ensure that? Then with all of these, you have to go back for approvals from your local authorities. So you're going to do some project, it's going to have impacts on them. You may have to do some road closures. You may have to do certain things. So you need to get all your approvals in place, getting the consultants into a physical structure. So at the design phase, they would have thought of, okay, let's do this kind of foundation. Let's say that let's do piles. Okay, great. How does that impact on how you build? At the design phase, they would have checked what is the strength of the soil, what is the holding capacity of where we're going to build it. So at the construction stage, you need to understand the design considerations and now translate them into activities. And once you understand all of that, you come to the planning and programming of your activities. What you're going to ask is, okay, how long have we got to build this tower? How long is it going to take us? Based on how long it's going to take us, how do we phase the project? How do we plan how much time we spend doing the foundation? How much time we spend doing the superstructure? How much time are we going to spend to do every aspect of it? By the way, as you can see on the screen, as Nikki said, we made students do a part of this project, which we'll talk about later. But the program, the simple program you see on the bottom of the screen is something that a student did in terms of planning for this project. So what we're saying is you plan, okay, how do we get materials? When do we get materials? What would be the lead times to get things delivered on the site so we can do this tower? So you do all your planning. After your planning, you come to, okay, let's build. What do we need to build? And again, the planning phase would overlap some of these things that I'm talking about now. You need to think about, okay, what do we need to do? We need some plant, definitely we need some cranes. What sort of foundation are we going to use? Are we going to do piles? Okay, we need a power rig. What sort of professionals do we need on there? Which sort of labor do we need? What sort of materials do we have to bring onto the site? And then which sort of management team would we need to have on site? How do we manage health and safety? How do we manage our engagement with the communities around us? So you can tell a lot of people, a lot of considerations would go into planning for the building of a tower. So once you've planned all of these, you go on to the build stage. So let's see here. As you come to build, one of the key things you need to check is, okay, this is going to be a tower. It's going to be very high. So how do we secure it into the ground? What sort of foundation are we going to talk about here? How do we make sure the tower is going to stand, is going to be stable, and it's not going to collapse? Let's put it that way. So once you think of your foundation, so in this project, they had to use piles. They also had to use the basement for the old NatWest Tower, which was in the same location as the project. So as you can see the picture on your left side, they had to actually make sure the base was correctly constructed. And as I said, they used the existing basement. But then the key feature is, aside getting the basement done, a tower is going to be very long. It goes very high up in the sky. So how do we ensure it is going to be stable? How do we ensure it is going to be straight? How do we ensure whatever happens, we have a structure that stands on its own self-weight and is still going to stand once we begin to occupy it? So height means a lot when it comes to tower construction. So on this, the team had to come up with, how are we going to do it? So they opted to do a concrete core for it using slip form. And again, that's something Phil and the rest of the team will talk more about when we get to that section. So once you've actually decided your materials, decided how to go with your foundation, decided what materials to use for the foundation, decided who is going to build what time you're going to do what, you come to the work itself. First, you have to set out your site. So you need to set up the site, allocate everything on the site, then set out your building. Where exactly would this building be positioned on the site? That is very important. You take into account the size of space you have, what the designer thought of, because by the design, they would have exactly where this building or this tower is going to be. Am I going to do just-in-time delivery because I may not have the space? So all these things you need to consider, right? So position of the various amenities on the site, you have to consider all of that. As you can see from the top left corner of your screen, we have a very small site for this big or this magnificent project. So the team had to really plan around it before they get on to their construction, right? So they started with the foundation, and as we said, they used piles. They had to get their piles down into the ground to support or to create a base for this very project. They had to now construct the core of the building. Again, as I said, they used a concrete core with a slip form. You can actually see that slip form rig on your left-hand side of the screen. And because of the nature of the project, they had to build the core, make sure it stood and was stable before they began to do the other aspects of it. So yes, you begin with your foundation, get it strong enough, do the core, now begin to do the rest of what we call the superstructure, where you do your floors and everything in place. Then they came to the enclosure. This was actually a fully glazed project. So again, a number of considerations. How many panels of glasses are you going to put up there? How do you actually get things up there? Where do you position your cranes? How do you plan and phase out your project? So again, that is part of the process they had to go through. Then you come to the fit out. That's after you've done all your enclosure, you've done the envelope of your building. You can now look at the fit out. Then you come to your external works. Again, looking at the nature of the site. Would you have to move where certain things are as you start the project? So I know with what BAM did, they had an office just outside the site. Later, as they were able to do part of the envelope, they had to move their team to occupy portions of the building itself. So these are all things you plan way in advance before you even get on to do the project. So once you've been able to construct everything, you come to, okay, how do we remove our equipment from the site? How do we even take up the towers that we brought onto the project? And I'm sure today they were taking down the tower. So something Jay or one of the members of the team can actually talk about. So you build your tower from your ground up, you make sure it's stable, you make sure everything is fixed. Then you can now come to the occupation where the client or the people who need to occupy this building or this project would take over. So now let's plan which motorway your deliveries are going to come in from, where things like your glass is going to come in. Is it coming from locally? Is it coming from somewhere in Europe? Is it coming from a different country? So all these have to be planned by the team. Now, another big challenge is the location. So we all know where 103 Colmore Row is, very busy city center. The question is, how do you work around a busy city center? How do you deliver your materials? Are you going to get permit to close portions of the road? Would you have to deliver at night? Would you have to deliver after the working day? So all these are some of the constraints that you deal with because of the location. Again, looking at the site itself, as I said, it was a very small site. Again, you can see this from your top right corner of your screen. A very small site, but you still need to plan for it. Where do you get your cabins? Where do you put your gates? How do you ensure protection, holding, and everything is done? Where do you even put your site offices? Again, looking at the project itself, if you cannot store every material on site, are you going to do what we call just in time? How do you even work around that? So these are some of the issues the team had to deal with. Again, there's not enough space on the site, but where do you put your cranes? So the team had 2 cranes on this project. The question is, where do you put it? Because you don't have that much space. So on this project, I'm sure Phil will talk about it, where they had to put 1 crane on top of the core, another crane on the other side where the old basement was. Again, you come to your neighbors. What sort of neighbors have I got on this site? And how do these neighbors matter? Again, what is our noise levels, vibration levels? How does that affect our neighbors? How do we work around that? How do we protect the people, the general public? How do we ensure we don't have any occupiers liability issues? How do we ensure people don't just wander off onto the site and get injured? So these are some of the considerations or some of the difficulties you deal with But then, yes, you have to manage all of these, which means different parties, different people will be involved with the process. Again, when it comes to the key issues, planning and sequencing, how do you ensure everything will work together? Where would you even get your supply chain? Where would your supply chain be based? So as you can see on the map on the top right side, this was actually part of the student submissions where they had to check the local area for suppliers and how far they could be and how they could get up onto a project. And if you look at the top left side, this was actually what we call your crane zones. If you're going to have a crane, you need to check what are the safe zones for the crane. How do you ensure nobody is working or working, general public is not working under the crane in case of any accidents or anything? So you plan for these things. Then you look at the map on the, this is a picture from Google Maps from your bottom left. Again, it's a very busy place. How do you ensure you don't just negatively impact the people? Because a lot of you would know construction hasn't always been environmentally friendly. So how do you ensure the noise levels, the pollution levels, and the environmental concerns are dealt with? Again, in terms of planning and sequencing and phasing, there's something we call clash detection and all of that. How do you detect to make sure that when I translate this design into construction, there's not going to be clashes? How do you ensure everything is going to work smooth? So the two pictures in the middle at the bottom of the screen, they were actually some student works that where they tried to do the module of the building to try to do some clash detection to see how the construction process can go on without any issues. Again, in terms of key issues, there's something we call safety, which I'm sure we all know about. Health and safety is very, very important. Again, this is a tower. You're going to work at height. How do you ensure protection for the people working at height? Again, how do you protect the site in terms of the neighbors, people around? How do you, as I said before, how do you make sure nobody gets injured on the site? Again, your health and safety for your workers on site. What sort of PPEs are you going to give them? What sort of training are you going to give them? What sort of induction are you going to give them? Normally, in sites like this, you have a controlled, security controlled gate, just to make sure whoever gets on there has a right to be there, and you give them the induction to make sure they are safe when they are on the site. So yes, doing a project of this nature was actually, it's actually a good thing. It's actually very complex, but then it takes a very good contractor who knows what they're doing to come up with ways and means of sorting it out and making sure it's built correctly. So I'm sure Nikki and the rest would come in now, where we can have a discussion on how this actually works in practice. Thank you very much, Nikki.
Thank you, Solomon. And Jay, if you're there, you just click the little round button on the top left-hand side and you can join us on screen as well. So Jay is the project manager. So thank you for an overview, Solomon. It sounds really easy, very straightforward. And what are the actual day-to-day things that were faced in getting this building built? You mentioned the neighbours. So Phil, who were the neighbours on this project?
And it was quite an important client, I think we'll say, is one of the largest lawyer firms in Birmingham. So Eversheds are the direct neighbour. And Jay had some direct contact on a regular basis, didn't you, Jay?
Yeah, we had to have basically a monthly coordination meeting. There was also what they call a working together deed, which was a document put together from the enabling works contractor who carried out the demolition. And then we inherited that for our contract. So when we started to build, we had to work in line with the working together deed. That sets out what you can do, what you can't do, noise-wise and vibration with the building next door, so they can maintain their business as usual while we're trying to build a tower next door to them.
And what were some of the other challenges that you faced? You mentioned all that glazing. I remember talking to you about that being a challenge.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
All the glazing. I think Phil was talking about how you were working with your just-in-time delivery on the glazing.
Yeah, but we've had just-in-time deliveries for outside. Like I say, the confines of where we are with the hoarding, and obviously the size of the footprint of the building. Deliveries, we haven't got the room to have deliveries coming in. So what we do, we have coordinated deliveries set up by an electronic M-site system, where the subcontractors have to book the deliveries in 2 weeks in advance. So as each slot becomes taken, obviously the next subcontract takes the next available slot he can get in. That way we minimise disruption to obviously the city centre, and we've got deliveries coming in just in time basis. The glass, we install the glass via spider cranes internally within the building. Again, the option of having mast climbers wasn't an option. The use of using a tower crane, obviously you've got restrictions within using the tower crane because then you're weather dependent a lot of the time on the wind. So by installing the glass from within the building footprint externally, that obviously gave us more of an advantage externally with where we put hoists and obviously getting deliveries in and out and exclusion zones.
And those cranes, putting those cranes up, and as you recently know, that taking the cranes down is quite a challenge, as also getting some of those, some of your columns in. I remember the city centre being shut for a couple of days.
Yeah, the biggest thing was the crane strategy. We looked at it, both myself and Daryl, very early on in the tender stage. Obviously, where you actually position your cranes, how much is going to affect you during your construction stage, but at the same point, how it's going to affect you when you come to take the cranes down. So the strategy we came up with in the end was to put TCA, which was the one that came out first. That, although that was in the footprint of the building, you always try and put a tower crane outbound if you can. But here, with the restrictions, we didn't have the opportunity. So TCA, which was the first tower crane to go in, that went through 18 floors of the building. And then TCB, which was the second one, sat on top of the core at level 23. What that enabled us to do is we had to have a row closure to put the first TCA in, but TCA was a self-climbing crane. So once it was installed to the first height at 67 metres, thereafter it could climb itself up without having a row closure. We then used TCA to install TCB. TCB sat on 23, and then we used TCB to take TCA out, again without a row closure. So the only real row closure we've had in this one, we're just actually just in the last throes of now, which is a big mobile 1,000-ton mobile crane that sits on the crossroads between Colmore Row and Newell Street. That then takes out TCB, which is now successfully, it's done today. So we're now just using that crane from this afternoon through till tomorrow at 12 o'clock to install the steelwork infill from 23 to 26. Then tomorrow from 12 o'clock onwards, we then into de-rigging the crane. There's a 12-hour process for that. Road closures are all in place. All the subcontractors are geared up now from 12 o'clock midnight tomorrow night to come back in to get everything back as it was. So some of normality and the road back open for BCC. So it's a challenge, but like I say, because we had time up front to look at it and manage it and plan to suit, we've managed to minimise the disruption caused.
Cool.
Sorry, can't hear you.
So Daryl, you were talking about the foundations that are quite different in this site, and how you save the money, save cost on those.
But we didn't really get a choice. The building was designed to utilise the existing NatWest slab. So the existing NatWest slab's a raft slab, and it varies between 1 metre and 1.2 metres deep. So what we did was dowel some rebar into that slab and then basically kick off the core walls and the buttress walls in the basement, which allowed us to obviously start building off it. The B1 extension was the only bit that we had to create a new foundation solution. So we basically installed piles, and that supports the new whole elevation of the building.
So anything else you'd like to add, Phil, or would you like to tell us who's involved in all of this?
Well, to be honest, I was going to say, Jay, one of the biggest challenges I think has been the British weather and climate change, and it's certainly had an effect with a certain amount of winding off, as we know it in the industry. So how has that affected us with our cranes?
We've lost, the wind's been a challenge, but like I say, to be honest, we did look at that early doors. So with the glass being installed from the inside of footprint, the advantage that gives you is you're not tower crane dependent to install the glass. So when you look at the building now, the only glass that was installed with a tower crane was the high level glass due to the weight and the size of it. The high level glass is just over 9 metres in length each pane. So that we couldn't fit into the hoist. But again, when we were looking at early doors, hoist selection, tower crane location, bearing in mind we wanted to take out the risk of wind as much as we could do. So what we went to one of the hoist providers we use, and we said, right, this is the size hoist we need. Get them 2 hoists that size. By doing that, that allowed all the glass to be loaded out vertically onto the floor plate of the hoist. So we didn't need a tower crane for that. So all the way through the construction process, especially in this country, and especially when building a tower, you always look at what you're trying to construct, but more importantly, what do you need the tower cranes for, and what don't you need the tower crane for. Every activity you can take away from the tower crane, you're de-risking your program on the wind. So that's what we did on here. So really, the tower crane, apart from steel frame and some of the concrete works at higher levels, because again, concrete, we went away from the skip and went to a pump to concrete the floor plates. Again, we had a pump for the core. So really, the biggest wind impact we had was for the steel frame erection. Everything else we took, or as much as we could, we took off the critical path with the weather and made that more efficient by taking that out.
Excellent. I think one of the other major issues was that obviously Eversheds next door wanted their basement access maintained at all times. So how did you cope with that? Well, again, at the early doors, we were looking at how we create the building with Eversheds close proximity. So we designed what we call a gangway scaffold system that went over Barton Passage. By doing that, and again having the glass fed from inside outside, that enables Eversheds to maintain access into their car park at all times 24/7, while we were happily constructing the project next door to them with minimal impact to them at all. In fact, to be honest, up to date, we've not received one complaint from Eversheds. We've had quite a few good testimonials from them. So that just is a testament to how well we've managed the process. And again, I can't emphasise enough, having the time to look at that up front. Myself and Darryl managed to mitigate most of that, if not all of it, to date so far. Touch wood, frantically touching wood here. One of the issues I know we were looked at early doors was the effect of Brexit. So has that had any effect on the project, Jay? No, it's one of those. I mean, no one's got a crystal ball, and I think even now no one really knows the effects Brexit's going to have. But what we have done, we've managed to procure all the glass which was coming from Italy. So all the glass is now manufactured and it's in this country. The last section of glass to go in is where we've got the hoist infill. So we've got two 32-person hoists and a pedestrian hoist next to each other. So when we were looking at Brexit and how that could possibly risk this project, we made a decision to call the glass into England this side of the border, before next year. So all the glass for the project is now in the country. Excellent. And obviously the recent COVID pandemic, has that had any effect on what we've had to do on site? To be fair, that's had quite a large impact on us, because where we had the cabins externally, whereas in a normal environment you'd get 32 people sitting into a cabin having break, that went down to 7. So when COVID started to impact on us, we should have been at that point, we should have had about 150 operatives on site. That dropped down to literally 69 overnight. We then shut site for just over a week while we were looking at processes, procedures, what we had to get in place to make sure we were compliant with the CLC, which is the Construction Leadership Council, and also what we could do above and beyond that. So the only way we could get around that, as in when I say around it, not around circumnavigating the guidelines by no means, but by making sure we can get the guys on site working efficiently, maintaining social distancing, we had to put welfare on levels 4 and levels 5. So we've turned level 4 and 5 into temporary welfare. What that has given us is enough seating for 320 operatives on site now. So with COVID, where COVID currently is now, we're well above and beyond the guidelines in there. So we had a bit of a challenge there for a while, and that meant we had to look at the programme, see what subcontractors we needed on for the critical path at that moment in time. And we had to let some subcontractors go off site until we got level 4 ready, and then obviously from level 4 on to level 5. But we got level 5 ready literally beginning of November, end of October, beginning of November. So as it stands now, 320 guys on site we can accommodate for. We've also got site offices for both the subcontractors, and we've moved on to level 5 within the building as well. Excellent. I think one of the things that people might not understand is that Birmingham City Council has an embargo. Could you explain a bit about that for me, please? Yeah, the Christmas embargo. I don't know whether I should be saying this or how politically correct to say this, but one thing that COVID has helped us with is normally each year the Birmingham Council have an embargo. So if you've got any major moves on site, whether that's hoardings, tower cranes coming out as an example, if they're not out by the first weekend in November,
you can't take that out until the first weekend in January. So one thing that it has helped us out with, and like I say, a little bit due to COVID and the delay we had due to the COVID and putting measures in place, that meant our tower crane couldn't come out when we wanted it to before the embargo. But like I say, because the Christmas market hasn't gone on this year, BCC, and like I say, Daryl's done an awful lot of work with BCC coordinating it. That's enabled us to take the tower crane out, if you like, in the embargo, but this year the embargo's not going ahead. If the embargo had gone ahead, that meant we wouldn't have been able to take the tower crane out until at least first week in January. But again, that time again, the English weather, as it lovely is, we would have been forced with wind probably to put that back till February, March even. So that has helped us, like I say, where we are now, being able to take the tower crane out this side of Christmas.
So have we had our hours extended on site? Because I know something with COVID was that the hours could be extended on site. Has that been the case on 103?
What we did, we resequenced the program. So where the program had the same period, obviously it was a bit of a time shift, obviously due to COVID and the EOT we had from the client. But what we did manage to do was look at the works we were doing, and whereas traditionally you'll have one trade following on very well, literally overlapping with another trade, we managed to resequence our work so we have one trade working, finishing, then the other trade starting. That was quite challenging, but in the end we just about got there. So as it stands now, like I say, it's literally very clean and it's more elongated as opposed to being stacked. Yes, it means working on more floor plates over the entire building than what we originally wanted to, but by working on all the floor plates now, we can segregate workforces by trade more efficiently. So it's been a challenge, but like I say, we're getting there.
Excellent.
So Phil, I think now we've got over 300 people on site. So Phil, do you want to tell us a little bit about who those people are and the types of roles involved in this?
Absolutely. I could just jump back into the presentation. Thanks for that, Jay.
Our microphone's off. Thanks very much, Jay.
Okay, so who actually builds a tower? Well, it's not me. I'm the education coordinator, as you can see on the screen. So we rely on some pretty experienced guys on our sites to ensure that this goes as it's programmed and to cost and all the other necessary health and safety implications. So here's the team that I've sort of, now this doesn't cover everybody, so I do apologise, but we have tried to get the main teams in. So the frontline staff, that'll be Jay in his construction manager position, and he has a team working with him, including a number of very experienced senior site managers, a logistic manager, and also one of our apprentices, young Bradley, who's a trainee site manager. And then what we class as site based, but could have actually been in the different offices. They're now all sharing offices, and some are actually working from home, is the commercial team. So those are the guys who control the cost. So we have a commercial manager, a series of project quantity surveyors who look after the packages. We then have as package QS, the MEP, so that's mechanical, electrical, plumbing QS. And again, we have another apprentice as a trainee QS who's looking after the mechanical, electrical and plumbing side. And then mixed again, we have a design manager. So Danny would normally be on site or patrolling the offices, trying to make sure that everything's been designed correctly. And he has a team working with him. Again, a lot of the major elements of mechanical, electrical and plumbing due to the nature of the project. So we have a massive team on site controlling electrical services, plumbing installation, mechanical extract, plant and equipment like that. But also have construction design managers, construction planners. So Daryl's fulfilling that role for us on that project. And we also have assistant design managers and assistant planners. So we've got young Tom. And we also have another apprentice who's a trainee BSM or building services manager. And with a bit of support from the back team. So we have construction director Steve, health and safety advisor Luke, digital construction experts Matt, sustainability advisors Jess and Suzanne, Emma and John in buy-in, HR team, and obviously myself, who sort of looks after the social value element to give back what we can whilst we're actually building on site. So who manages the build? Well, in a nutshell, it's Jay. Jay and his team who are out there. And as you can see, what I've tried to demonstrate on the left-hand side is that, yes, they're front line. They're there every day in the rain, the muck, the bullets, the wind, with all the pressures of trying to get a crane in and out safely and deliveries in and out safely and getting guys in and out safely. Again, a bit of support there from the health and safety advisor. Often we'll get visits from our design or digital construction manager who works with building information modelling, or BIM, again on the clash detection side. Obviously, we have to be careful, as Solomon alluded to earlier. We're not the best industry in the world for protecting the environment, but we have a sustainability advisor to advise and guide us on what needs to be done. Site managers working with buying, procuring materials, and again, logistics, making sure that the deliveries come when they say they do, using the electronic M-site system. And then Brad learning his trade as potentially a construction manager of the future. So Jay will have a number of other responsibilities other than the ones that I've shortlisted down there, but looking after health and safety is number one. Quality, making sure the client gets what they pay for. Program, make sure we try and finish on time where we can. Obviously with COVID, that's a little bit of a push. Making sure we have the right amount of site labour and they're correctly qualified. Again, we don't want people on site who are not supposed to be doing the job that they're doing. Plant materials and controlling our waste. We don't want to throw too much of this materials away, so we look to recycle wherever possible. The cost element, it's a major element because obviously this is a nearly £80 million project, so you can't afford to lose a penny on this project, to be fair. So every cost is scrutinised by the site team under the guise of Dave Watson, who's our commercial manager. And again, you can see there's a team of QSs, again, input from the BIM element to our digital construction manager. And we have, like I say, a trainee who's an ex-graduate who's decided that he wants to specialise in mechanical electrical services costings, which is unusual. And again, they'll be looking at the programme, the site labour, plant materials, payment requests and invoices so that the client's getting the right bill at the end of the month. Design side, critical. Making sure everything that's been designed by both the architect and structural engineer and the specialist building services design engineers, the lift manufacturers, you name it, we've got to make sure that when we put it all on site, it doesn't fall apart or it doesn't clash with something else, or you haven't got a pipe going where a window goes. So Danny's role is, again, very important in this, making sure that obviously we've got things that go in the right locations. And again, you'll see there's bits of input there from the BIM manager, and again, sustainability, because we have to look at things like BREEAM, which is making sure the building performs at the end of the day, and we have a certain criteria. And along with this, you can probably make out from the picture that Danny's actually there with students from BCU. So each of our team members has given the time to support the young trainees of the future and the full-time students at BCU. Building services, often forgotten. It's a heck of an industry. We realise that we need to control this more, so we actually have our own team that look after this now. And we've employed a lot of the people who would have worked for some of the supply chain because they have the expertise to do this. So again, clash detection's vital, making sure that we get things in underneath ceilings and in floor voids and things like that. Coordinated design information and the supply chain lead-in times. You can't buy a lift off the shelf. You need to make sure that you place an order well in advance to get a lift. And there's 13 lifts on this project, so you can imagine this is going to be quite a hectic fit-out period as we would start installing lifts. And coordination with the design for the client, because obviously the client wants to potentially make changes. So can they happen, or you need to have the information in time. One peculiar thing for this project is the public art, which is suspended below the winter garden. That is an unknown in terms of how you can manufacture that. So we're actually working with BCU on how that can be produced, because it's a very unusual piece of artwork, very difficult to try and manufacture and design. So construction careers. So we're currently supporting, as I've mentioned, the site management trainee. That's Bradley in the top picture on the right-hand side. Building services, that's Joe in the middle. And construction management trainee, that's Joe at the bottom. And they were actually filmed live on BBC News to mark National Apprenticeship Week. And that was great for their self-confidence to put them in front of a camera live with a whole load of other people, including our area director. In addition to the roles at degree level, we're also supporting graduate design managers, construction planners and quantity surveyors. So they are coming in through different routes and different universities. And of course, you can't forget Birmingham City University's degree courses. So if you are interested, or you know somebody who's interested, remember to look for the quantity surveying, construction management and architectural technology courses, because these are all roles, including architectural technology, which could go into design management or site management on site. So hopefully I haven't rushed too much into that, but I'm just conscious we've got a lot to get through. So I think the next section is how did we all get to where we got to?
Okay, welcome back everybody. And if Jay, turn your camera on, Jay. So, how did you get to where you? Why don't we start with you, Phil? How did you get into the role you're in working for BAM?
Interestingly, I left school and became a carpenter. So I was a YTS carpenter who progressed into a full apprenticeship after 12 months of grafting on site in Stratford-upon-Avon on the theatre. I then went through to construction management because I actually never stopped learning from the day I started with my first company. Then I was promoted to trainee site manager. I then became a site manager with my own projects before taking a sort of specialist lead into Daryl's area, really, into planning. So I was senior planner at two of the regional builders before I decided that I quite like training. So I actually set up my own company and became my own freelance planner, whilst also delivering training to a number of SMEs or small, medium-sized companies. Before joining BAM in 2006, so just after Christmas, I'll have been here 15 years in the role of education coordinator.
Excellent. So, Daryl, tell us a bit about what being a planner is.
Well, it's a daft art. So basically, you draw the programme for the project. You have a lot of involvement in the logistics strategy, as Jay says. We had too many conversations actually about how this would be built. We run through probably hundreds upon hundreds of scenarios about what the best way to build and try and get the optimum way. So that's what the good planner does, is get the optimum programme and not necessarily the longest programme. So there's quite a lot of work in that.
And Jay, how did you get to be managing the project at 103 Colmore Row? What was your route in?
I've probably shown my age a little bit now, but my route into construction was finishing off the 5th year at school. Alfreda Zane Pett, a lot of people on here probably won't remember that, but Alfreda Zane Pett was on at the time. Thought that looks quite good, so I got into the trade of a bricklayer. Did my City & Guilds through to advanced craft, then went on to night school for a few years. Then I spent probably about the next 10 years actually on the tools before I then decided to go into management as a trade foreman and work my way through the ranks to senior project manager. I've done several jobs with BAM, been with BAM Construction now for coming up to 25 years, and we built the last one I built before this one was Jaguar Land Rover car park in Castle Bron. That was a very quick programme, very quick turnaround. I built our offices, actually our head office in town, just off Junction 4 of the M42, and worked my way up that way.
Cool. So when we talk about being a planner, so I'm a planner, but I'm a town planner, and it's a very different kind of planning. So my role is I look at how, where a site should be, how it should be built, how it fits in with the city centre. And I came through a university route and a master's degree. But Alex, you've just finished, well, not long finished your construction management degrees. So what's the benefit of doing a degree? You've got the practical experience. What about the degree aspect?
So obviously I was a trainee site manager with BAM. I did a 6-week work placement, and then I just kind of kept on in a kind of like 0 hours kind of come in when you're not at uni. So I think I was at uni 3 days a week, and I would work 2 days a week at BAM on the BCU City South campus. That was my first project that I did with BAM. It was really interesting to get the practical experience, to develop those kind of the key knowledge and to kind of see. But I think in terms of the kind of construction management degree, I got a broad overview of every kind of skill set. I learned what a design manager did, even though I wasn't actually within that department. I learned what a QS did. Would never do it ever again, but what it was. And I kind of I was able to get a really good broad overview. But I think as well, in terms of doing a degree in construction, you want to have that practical experience. It really pairs so well with the courses, especially if you're working with contractors. Even if you're working for a client, it just develops your kind of overall skill set.
And Solomon, you're a quantity surveyor. You're one of those people that Alex hates. Just if you pop your microphone on, Solomon.
Yeah, I got that. Okay. So I'm a quantity surveyor, but I did a degree in what we call building technology, which was mainly about understanding how to build. But then I decided, okay, I want to major in quantity surveying. So I started as a construction manager, sort of, but then went into quantity surveying, got my degree and everything, worked a bit. And then as part of work, I wanted to move into more of management. So I had to work as a project manager, even though I was a quantity surveyor. Then later I realized, wait, I want to rather go into education. So I did a PhD in project management. So I'm able to at least understand quantity surveying side, understand the project management side as well. So Alex may hate me because yeah, she doesn't want to be a quantity surveyor, but then yeah, I love two of them. I love the two because at least I have the background in both. I'm able to look at things from both angles. Yeah.
And I think the thing with being when you get a degree as opposed to doing an HNC, like Alex, you're developing your HNC at Hales Owen College, is about getting that professional accreditation that you need.
Yeah.
So once you are doing a degree, you become a member of the Royal Institution of the Chartered Surveyors, a member of the Chartered Institute of Building, and that's really your next step up into the industry. It certainly increases your pay rate.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on 103 Colmore Row, were there any issues we had with the different contractors or the challenges you had? I don't want to know the horror stories, but anything you want to pick up on some of those issues, Pill?
No, I think actually that all the subcontractors have done well. I mean, I work with them behind the scenes when I'm trying to organise work placements and trying to get young people into employment through work placements with our supply chain. So they've done well. I think that the biggest challenge we had was we did a bit of an exercise to catch up a bit of time with the slip form ring, didn't we, Daryl and Jay? So I think we managed to work a few extra hours and increase the rate at which the concrete was being poured. Is that true?
You're on mute, Daryl.
It keeps cutting off. Yeah, we do have a very happy supply chain on our job. Usually when you do these big jobs, you fall out with somebody, but we set out a strategy at the start to make sure that everybody was well looked after. So as I said, the one issue was the slip form core. So basically the concrete was too sticky because we had to use C60 concrete. But again, we got our arms around the subcontractor. We made a new plan, and they actually recovered. They were about 4.5 weeks behind, and they finished 3 days late in the end. So to recover 4 weeks is unheard of. It never happens, but yeah, it happened on our job.
So well done. So I'm going to pass back to Solomon now, and you're going to talk a little bit, you and Alex, about the project that you did, which was pretty scary. So if we go back to that, and we'll all turn our mics off.
Okay. So BCU, we actually, as part of our construction courses, we always want to make sure students are not just sitting in the lecture halls, they're not just going into the labs, they don't just get things from lecturers, but then they also get the chance to put what we tell them, what we teach them in the classrooms into practice. So we had to come up with this project. So as you can tell from the title, the BCU BAM collaboration, we wanted students to learn from a live project how best to do it than to get a very good contractor working on a very good project who is willing to support students. So Alex and I are going to talk about what we did on this project, because then Alex was a student. So she actually took part in this project as a student, and later she had to come and help us as somebody working with BAM to help us do an assessment for the rest the students for the year after. So let me just see, what did we say the students should do? We gave the students the same project 103 Colmore Row, that the task was for them to actually form their own little companies. Yeah, so they have to form their own construction companies and assume all the roles, all the roles Phil talked about. So they have to get their own project managers, planners, they have safety coordinators, their BIM managers and all of that. What we wanted them to do is to bid for this project. So just like BAM did bid for this project to win, go ahead to do it, the students were required to do the same thing. We wanted to give them a very practical assessment, something more like on the job practice, and wanted them to interact with industry, be able to apply what they've learned from first and second year. So this was a final year project, one with a difference. We wanted to give them that opportunity to see, okay, how do things work actually on site? How do they work on project instead of just how it should work ideally? Because as we all know, the ideal thing wouldn't always happen on site, right? So what did the students have to do? They had to set up their own company, as I said. They had to propose an operational team, so they were actually allowed to get anybody at all in the industry they wanted on their team. They had to create their own detailed program, including timing, sequence, key dates, just as we had Jay and the team did. Also, they had to offer their own opinion on structural frame, choice of materials, existing services, quality and environmental considerations, things like social value, local employment. So we just wanted the students to act like BAM or any other contractor who's going to do such a project. And once they've done that, they had to present to BAM their solution or what they had planned to do, their own contract figure, their own project duration, their own considerations and issues, their own risk register. So as you can see on the left side, we had about 11 key things we wanted them to do. So prelims, price it, their own staffing, logistics, supply chain, materials availability, quality management, and most importantly, we wanted them to do something BIM related. So they had to do a 4D synchro module for this particular project. And that was something that I'm sure Alex, so good thing is Alex and his and her team, they won this during the time they took part in it. So when I get to your turn, you can actually tell us how you won this, right, as a team. So in terms of the solutions, the students came up with very, very impressive solutions. Some of them did very good costing that the BAM team was so happy about because they got their costing right. Some of them did very good programs, which were quite close to what BAM was actually doing. And in the bottom left, you can see this was somebody's synchro module. Again, later we'll get to watch a video of it, which was very, very good. We had to put it out there. So the students came up with a lot of things, a lot of considerations that come up with their own planning for where to put the cranes, their health and safety issues to do with it, how to plan their site. So as you can see from the top right, they had to decide, it's a very small site, but then how did they set up offices? How did they set up canteen, all of that? How did they ensure the timing of delivery of materials, things coming in, things going out, segregation of waste, and all of that? And the students were able to come up with very, very impressive submissions. The key thing is, once they had submitted all of that, they had to now meet the BAM team and present their results. So luckily for us, BAM dedicated a lot of time to this project, and they had 2 meetings at least with every group, and they had 2 sets of assessment. One, they had to do what we call the pre-qualification very early on to show that they're actually on track. Then they had to do the tender submission and do the tender presentations, which went very, very well. So I'm just going to show us one student submission in terms of the synchro. It's about a minute video, but then this student group were actually able to come up with something very, very good in terms of synchro, in terms of how to use the 4D to show the project itself. So they had to come up with their own program on MS Project and then present that program, use synchro to actually make this program work, to see any issues with site teams, any issues with the progress of the work. So as you can tell, the site is going to come up very soon on your screen. And this is actually a student project. They had to module this right into the site, exactly where the project is in Birmingham. And as you can see, they had to reduce the level of almost all the buildings in Birmingham, just so you can see. So yes, they had their tower crane coming up around week 65 on their project. And as you can tell on there, they just did this simulation to say, okay, this is our program. This is how it's going to work actually when we get on there. So that was a very good, as I said, that was a very good student submission. And when it came to the assessment, BAM again gave us a number of their staff who were willing to actually listen to the student presentation, sit in, offer advice, and the students were really happy with this. So what were some of the good things the students enjoyed? The site visits, they really loved it. The opportunity to role play a real life project. The fact that they were actually being assessed by BAM, which is one of the biggest in the industry, who was actually working on the same project. The students did love that. They got the opportunity to interact and learn with the site team. So we did a number of site visits where they could speak to the team on site on how they're doing things so they could actually learn from them. They were happy with the method of assessment. They were happy to impress the industry panel, and they really enjoyed the dedication and the time Phil and the team gave, which was very, very impressive. And out of this, we got to do another project later, which I'm sure we can talk about. So what were some of the benefits? Students were able to get some experience they put on their CVs. Yes, I did this. I worked on this project. They were able to get interviews and job offers from having to do a very live, real life project. They got the opportunity to network with industry team. In terms of BAM, they gained fresh ideas from soon-to-be graduates. At least they were able to gauge where these graduates, what levels they are on, and what they could actually be good at. There was also an opportunity for them to cherry-pick students who they thought were very good for the job as well. In terms of BCU, as a university or as the built environment school or department, we want to make sure we continuously get industry input in the way we deliver. So we don't just want to be isolated from industry, because at the end of the day, students would graduate, go into industry. So we wanted to be sure, okay, are they getting the right stuff? Are they ready for the industry? Are they getting that kind of practice, that kind of training that would make them fit in when they went there? So also, again, we're looking at strong relationships and future placement experiences and learning. So we believe in learning by doing, and that's how come we did this project with BAM. So as you can tell, that was Alex in there the day of your presentation. Alex, I should remember that.
Yes, I do.
You want to tell us something about your experience working on this project as a student?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a very competitive project. I think it was very much like I did the project back in 2018, so just as kind of Colmore Row was developing. And when I went onto site to look at it, it was literally just the basement, a bit of hoarding, and just a few operatives walking around compared to how it is now. And kind of, I think the really good, important thing with the project was, in terms of construction management, it showed everyone that we need to know the diverse, different needs, the different job roles in the industry. You know, my friend Simone on the left, she didn't want to do anything to do with costs, but she got involved and she really enjoyed it. And then she went into design management after. And I think, you know, you had to learn about health and safety, looking at different supply chain, and it gave you a really diverse overview of industry and how you apply that into a project. And I think we kind of also sometimes forget that what this project is how BAM actually tendered for it. You know, if we took BAM as the client, this was their project, and you know, we treated them as this is what we want to do, and we came up with health and safety mottos, quality mottos, all the kind of paperwork, and we really stuck into it, and you kind of felt like it was your project, that you'd seen it from start to finish, and that was amazing. And then obviously after that I was working for BAM, and I came in and did a couple of the pre-qualification interviews, and that's kind of where you don't really have the synchro model, then you're just kind of still in the development stages, and kind of helping some of the students, because until you actually have that feedback from industry, you don't know it exists. And sometimes, like you said, it's keeping up to date and it's staying modern, and it's sometimes, although the textbook might say that you do that, realistically you're not, because if your client wants your program in 2 years, you've got to make sure it fits there. And that was kind of the real key experience that I learned. It was kind of like you kind of tailor make the project to yourself, and you develop your team working skills massively.
Thank you very much for that, Alex. So from working on this project with BAM, because of the success we had with Alex's team, the next year we had to do it again, and then we were able to get other projects from BAM. So this was a BAM Natal project on the Old Viaduct repair scheme, which again, we got the chance to get another set of students to bid for this project as well. So it's something that is ongoing, and we're very happy to keep that relationship going, to make sure we're giving the students the best experience, we're giving them real world experience, they're getting to be assessed by industry leaders, people they might be working with later in the industry. So we wanted to make sure, as I said from the beginning, we prepare the students for the future, to make sure that university is not just lectures, it's not boring, it's very fun. And for us as academic staff, we wanted to make sure we keep up to date with what is happening, so the students get the best experience. Right. So I'm sure we'll be able to discuss with Phil and the rest how this whole project went and the performance and all of that. Yes, Nikki.
Okay, so I think we'd better wrap up with the student presentations and the student project. Let's start with Jay, because you work with all of our students. So what was the best bit about working with the students and seeing them develop?
To be honest, I'd say the enthusiasm. There's nothing more satisfying than seeing students who actually want to learn. They're keen to learn, that they're not shy in asking questions, and when you give them the answer, if they don't understand, they'll ask more questions so they do understand. And it is a buzz to see the students getting on.
What was the bit for you, Alex?
It was actually just kind of like going in, and I felt like this was my project and I was a part of this, and kind of having that feedback, sat in front of commercial directors from BAM saying, this is the cost I've decided, and then saying, no, actually, I think that's kind of about there. For me was like, I felt, yes, I've got the knowledge and I've applied it and I've succeeded. And that's the overall learning outcome. So yeah, that was the best thing.
And to wrap up this webinar, we're talking about 103 Colmore Row, but we're talking more widely about just going into construction and the careers you can go into. I'm going to go around the panel and say, what do you think is like the one thing that's most exciting about being in this industry, the built environment industries? I'll start off with Solomon.
Okay, thanks, Nikki. So I'll say one thing that is very great about being in this built environment industries, you get a chance to drive past a place or walk into a place and okay, I was actually involved in that project. There's that joy that comes with it, the fact that you contributed to making the built environment, which is great, and the fact that the industry is not one where you get to in the office all the time. The fact that you get to have some office time, you get to do some actual work, interact with people. So to me, that's one of the best things about the industry.
I definitely agree with that, and my career has changed a lot from doing a business degree right through to becoming a planner and then going into university. And it's that everything is different, and you get to create places that you can see decades down the line. Daryl, what's your favourite thing about being in this industry?
The fun. We have a great time. Even on the bad jobs, we have a great time. As I say, it's always fun. Every day is different. As I say, there's a few wind-ups, but that's part of the parcel. Alex will tell you that. But yeah, we just generally have a good time, and as I say, it can be stressful, but with the guys run about you, yeah, it's always enjoyable. There's never a bad day.
What about you, Jay?
For me, I'd say it is achieving something. Every project's different, so everyone's learning. I'm still learning now, and I'll continue to learn to the day I retire. But it's having the pride to be able to build something at the end of the day you can walk away, or you can drive past it 10, 15 years down the line, knowing that you had an input into that, and the fact that it is so varied. And again, like Daryl said, the crack you can have on site and the morale. One of the most important things for any job to be a success is to get your team working for you, but more importantly, want your team wanting to work to achieve the end goal, which everyone wants to achieve.
And Alex, you're relatively new into this industry. What still excites you?
I love the diversity of it. Obviously, I've left site management for a bit to go into kind of teaching over at Halzone College. But for me, I know that if I wanted to go back onto site, I can do that. I've got the strings to my kind of bow, and you kind of constantly, like Jay said, you're constantly learning because it's constantly expanding. It's constantly going to be different. And, I think the big thing for me is that I want people to know that construction isn't just about being an operative on site. It's so much more than that. And I'm fed up with my friends saying, "Oh, so are you a bricklayer?" I'm like, no, I've never done any bricklaying, but I have kind of been able to look at that, and I've met hundreds of different people. And for me, it's just the opportunities that are there are diverse.
That's fantastic. And Phil, we'll finish off with you.
For me, it's the fact that you're never alone. You're always part of a team. The characters that we employ make sure that you want to stay with the team all the time. So we have got some characters, and if you need help or advice, there's always somebody there on the end of the phone who's not there to take the mick. They're always there to support. So I think as an industry, It's going to get tougher, obviously, with what's happening with COVID and stuff. But once that goes, I think it's an industry that, yeah, I would definitely recommend to somebody if they want a creative challenge every day of the week.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap up there. So thank you all so much for giving up your time. And I know that, Jay, you've been up for 24 hours taking down that, or more, taking down that crane. So thank you all very much for your insights into how the project was built, the sorts of things involved in there. If anybody does want to know more, there'll be a replay here, and there'll be some links about how to contact BAM and how to look into different courses. And I hope that's piqued your interest and you want to learn a little bit more about working in the built environment, because it is a fantastic way of working as part of a team and building places that we'll live in forever. So thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.